the closing of our afternoon at this time is with three fantastic speakers. We've already had a number of brilliant sessions from other speakers that have come on and entertained us and educated us, and also given us real things to think about. And those things are about how we can take the events industry forward. Event Camp is really it's all about trying new techniques, trying new ideas, and looking at the industry in a slightly different way and saying, well, what could we do differently to benefit businesses everywhere through events that we put on? So that's really what it's about. Now, event camps are run by volunteers. So you have myself, I've been producing and curating the content of this, and also I've been your online host and on-site host for the past 2 days. At the back of the room, I have Martin Shepherdley from Be There Global, who is arranging to take all of the content outside of the room and stream it across the web. And he's been doing a fabulous job over the past, since we began yesterday on the 24th of March. And next to him, I see Anton from Newman & Miller, and they have been an extremely, just a brilliant audio-visual company that have really helped us put this thing together, because we've had a few technical glitches along the way, but they've all been ironed out. All the bugs have gone. And that's it. Plus, of course, we have our other driving force over in New Zealand, Mary Claire Andrews and Josh Dry, who have been doing a lot of marketing, but also they put an app together. They put the Show Gizmo app together, so you can go in and find all of the details of Event Camp on there. You can find the speakers' bios, you can rate the speakers as well, and you can basically find other documents that will be uploaded later on as well. So that's another great thing to check out. The furniture here is provided by Catertainment, and we've got beanbags, we've got lanterns, we've got a Middle Eastern feel around us, and GIBTM, of course, have been fabulous in inviting us back for a second time. So they've invited us back to deliver Event Camp again in their show, and this time we're really a big part of their show as well, because we are around me. I can see other exhibition stands, and there's a lot of business going on right now. So really good to be back here, and make sure that you follow us. Make sure you use the hashtag, which is ECME, have to get the letters around the right way, ECME14, and if you put that on Twitter or Instagram, that will pick up the social media activity, and that would be great, because we want to really spread the message, because these are events that are really looking to drive new ideas forward. We have a Facebook page, Event Camp Middle East, so you can go and like that, and also share the love. Make sure that other people around you are seeing what's going on right now. So if they go to bit.ly/event CME 14, then they will come to the viewing page. So do share with your friends and colleagues, and make sure that you are really helping us to spread the word. That would be fantastic, because it's for the benefit of the industry overall anyway. So the speakers this afternoon, we're going to start off with Graham Jones in a moment, and I'm going to get a signal from the back of the room in a moment. He's going to come in remotely. I've got that signal, and I can see Graham to my right. So, hello. Graham, good afternoon. Well, actually, good afternoon from Abu Dhabi, but I know we've got a 4-hour time difference in the UK. And just to let you know, outside my window, there's a beautiful blue sky. There's also there's a heat of late 20s, early 30 degrees Celsius. And right now you are in the exhibition. You are live in GIBTM, which is one of the Retravel exhibitions. They've got exhibitions across the globe, but we are here in Abu Dhabi National Exhibition Centre right now. So we are really looking forward to your session. I'm already getting questions from people, so that's fabulous. As an introduction, I was going to introduce you as the Internet Psychologist, which of course you are. Would you like to explain what you do? And I know we can move on and do our Q&A and soak up your vast knowledge of social media and how business can really use that.
Well, firstly, I wish I could soak up the lovely weather where you are, because here in the UK it's really dismal and grey and dreary. So being on one of those beanbags there sounds really inviting. But as a psychologist, I specialise in understanding how people behave online, how they use the internet, And I translate that into helping businesses really connect with their customers, their visitors, their users, to take into account their online behavior, which is frequently vastly different to what we do in the real world.
No, that's really, really, really good. And you're right. The beanbags, I mean, they're being used to some degree. Some people just want to come and chill out, and that's what they've been doing. So, so it's good to have that. We did have a falcon here yesterday. It didn't actually make it into event camp. I thought that might have been quite nice if we'd had a little falcon flying in. Yeah. My wife would laugh at that because I don't always get on too well with birds. Pigeons are not my best thing. But yeah, we had a falcon in here, and I can't imagine a show in the UK being able to have a live kind of, bird of prey around it. But there you go. So in terms of getting us going, I mean, there's a lot of social media and events. What can we do in the world of events to really use it to expand the message, but also to make sure that we're using the right tools? Because most people want to build communities. They want to get people to come back to their event or their venue or whatever it happens to be time and again. But what would your advice be on how we make sure that we're using the right tools?
I think really the whole issue that people face is that social media is vastly confusing. And that's because it's increasing at rapid rates. If we think, for example, just last week, we were celebrating the 25th birthday of the invention of the internet. And 25 years ago, we couldn't have done what we're doing now. In fact, probably 10 years ago, we couldn't have done it, not without spending lots and lots of money on satellite links and so on. Even when the web was invented, the inventor of Facebook was a mere 4 years old and hadn't started school. And yet, so we can see in those 25 years, Facebook is now responsible for about a quarter of all internet traffic. And in those 25 years, the numbers of social networks has just grown and grown and grown. And so for anybody in any industry, it's really difficult to work out, with so much expansion, with so many different social networks, where do we go to build our communities? It really is terribly confusing. And what happens from a psychological perspective is when we're confused, when we don't know, we give up trying. And that's a real problem because it means that we're missing out on being able to create those communities because we're confused by all the different kinds of things we could do. So I think the one thing we need to do is work out how we clear up that confusion, what it is we need to do as people working in the events industry to make sure that we're not faced by yet another social network, something else to think about, something else to do. It's all too confusing. We've got to clear that up, really.
So would that be, let's take, for example, you and I are both members of the Speaking Association, and we know that that's, in the UK anyway, that's got about 5,000 people. It's an open group. But I know that there's also some work that you do that goes into the LinkedIn group. But the LinkedIn group doesn't seem to get the traction that the Facebook group does. So, do you have to kind of try out different levels of tools, or do you think that you have to really work out what your group is all about and then kind of push them into a social media channel?
You have to do that second thing. You've got to work out what your group really are using and what they wish to use. There's an old adage, really, that if you want to get run over, the best place to stand is in the middle of the road. If you stand on the sidewalk, on the pavement, expecting a car to veer off course and run you over, it's less likely to happen. And so it's the same with social media. If you want to get run over by that traffic, by that community, you need to go where they're going. So, for example, if you're running an international event and you're using Facebook, you would hardly get anybody from Brazil because almost nobody in Brazil uses Facebook compared with a system called Orkut. And so consequently, you need to know where your traffic is. You need to start with your audience. What are they using? Why are they using it? How are they using it? And then you need to work out what you can do as a result. So the first place to work out and to avoid this confusion is starting where your audience is.
Right, that's really good. I'm getting some nodding heads in the room. Clearly, you can't see that because we're using a very simple technology today. We're using Skype. Graham cannot see us. He's actually talking to his camera. He's talking to us, of course, but doesn't have the benefit of the nodding heads. So I can be your conduit to what's going on in this particular room. And when you mentioned Brazil, I mean, I think for me there was a little light bulb that just went off and said, "Well, yeah, absolutely. How crazy to try and not to be run down by the car by not being in the road." I mean, we've used very simply. We've pushed Twitter as being a main social media channel for us for this particular event camp, because we found that that's where most of our people are likely to congregate, and we know from the past couple of days that that's been working. People have been getting on the Twitter stream, which is good. But do you think sometimes you might investigate your audience and say, okay, this is our profile of people, this is where we expect them to go, and then still find actually they're still not going there? I mean, do you give these things a certain length of time before you move to a different social media network?
You do have to give them a bit of time, because even though your audience might be there on Twitter, they might not know that you're there. So there's a bit of promotion work to do. There's a bit of visibility. There's a bit of, getting to be known that you're there, trying to build your community. So one thing I do find is that people tend to give up far too soon. So they try on Twitter for a week or two and they don't get the following they need. Had they persisted for 6 or 8 weeks, they probably would start to get the following. So it takes a lot longer for that visibility to happen. And that's also partly because users are confused where to go. They're on Twitter one day, Facebook the next, LinkedIn the next, Pinterest after that, Google+. Where do we go? In fact, if you look at Wikipedia, there's a list on Wikipedia of the top most active social networks, the ones that they call notable social networks, because they really do have traction.
Yeah.
That list has 198 social networks on it. So here we are talking about Twitter and Facebook. There's lots more to explore. And so people could be all over the place.
Wow. 198. I mean, that's just blown my mind, actually. I thought you were going to say somewhere nearer 20, 25, 30 even, but 198 networks that people can use and choose. Just on Facebook, you mentioned that a couple of times. I've been picking up on it could be wrong, but there seems to be a trend for some people to be moving away from that. Is that correct in your experience, or is that just wrong rumor? Or?
No, what's happening is in the mature markets for Facebook, so in places like the United States and Europe, people are slowly, it's only slowly, moving away from Facebook in favor of other things. And there are several reasons for that. One is that Facebook, in order to satisfy its investors, is having to increase the amount of advertising, sponsored posts, and so on. And many people don't like that because they didn't join Facebook to be advertised at, and consequently they're leaving. Teenagers are finding it more difficult to see all the adverts, and so many teenagers are now favoring Twitter. But there's another reason, and the other reason is that Facebook's age. It's 7 years old, and there's an analysis done by Gartner called their hype cycle. That looks at all technologies, and when technologies are introduced, we tend to think these are fantastic, why did nobody invent this before? This is brilliant, and we all get really excited about it. And then once we've got, hyper excited, it reaches what Gartner call the peak of inflated expectations, where we're all saying this is the best thing ever. Why did nobody ever come up with this idea? And then we start to use it more, and we realize actually it's not as good as we thought it was. And the technology then enters something called the trough of disillusionment. It's a very low point on their graph. Facebook has just gone over the peak of inflated expectations and is on its way down to the trough of disillusionment. Now, how long that's going to take, nobody really knows. What we do know is that all technologies that have ever been investigated go through this cycle of interest. So it's inevitable that Facebook will enter the trough of disillusionment. One thing we do know is that some technologies enter that trough of disillusionment and
never
never get out.
Yeah.
And they never become things that we then use on a regular basis. So an example of that here in the UK is a product called the Sinclair C5. That was a ride-on kind of low-level bike kind of thing that you kind of got in, and you were at the level of exhaust pipes of cars, and you kind of pedaled your way around. You looked ridiculous in it. When it was introduced, everybody said it was fantastic, and then when people started using it, they realized its limitations. That entered the trough of disillusionment, I don't know, 30 or 40 years ago, and has never come out since. So Facebook could enter the trough of disillusionment and never come out.
Yeah, no,
How, when it gets there, though, is anybody's guess. That might be 6 months away. It might be 5 years away. We just don't know.
Wow. I mean, that is, so 7 years old is Facebook. That is quite something, really. I mean, what about new social networks then? I mean, are there any that you see that are happening right now that you would really recommend, or say that people specifically in events and marketing venues and doing all of the things that we do in the events industry should really be looking at? Are there any new ones coming through? I think we're Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook we're fairly all familiar with, but what other new ones would you recommend?
There are some interesting ones. Vine is an interesting one. That's produced by the people who make Twitter. Vine is a 6-second looping video. So you produce a 6-second video clip, and it just plays constantly, over and over and over again. Now that's being used creatively by artists and people coming up with great ideas. Not quite sure how you might use it in the events industry yet, but there will be a way. So it's something to keep an eye on. When Twitter was invented, it wasn't invented for what we use it for now. And so we found ways of using it that the makers of Twitter had never envisaged. And so Twitter is vastly different to what they had thought of. That might be the case for Vine. So it's worthwhile keeping an eye on what's going on just to see the opportunities that might exist. Another one is Google+. Now, Google+ is growing dramatically. Now, partly that's because Google themselves are saying now for every service they have, your login is your Google+ account. So they're ramping up the numbers simply by that technique. But looking at what's going on Google+, there are some interesting parts of it. So, for instance, Google Hangouts, which allows you to do what we're doing right now using a Google+ account, is entirely free of charge. That means the entire webinar industry has a problem because they charge people and Google's doing it for nothing. And so that's something for the events industry to really look at. Plus, people appear to be using Google+ in very similar ways to Facebook. That means as Facebook enters the trough of disillusionment and Google+ is still on its way up in terms of value, you can see that people probably would, at some stage in the future, swap over. So if you want to be, future-proof, if you want to make sure that you are attracting those audiences, then a good place to look at is Google+.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. And Google Hangouts are something that I've been using for a little while now. I think the first time we used them, they were about 5 weeks old. And that was back in August 2011 when we actually did an event camp over in Europe, so just outside of London. We decided, as today, we would try something different, try and see what new techniques would leave for the industry. But Google Plus has always confused me as to what I would be posting on there. I kind of worked out LinkedIn. I could put professional networking information on there. Facebook, I might want to share a few kind of leisure activities, but Google Plus always confused me. But I'm one of those people that's moving more into using that than I am on the Facebook. But what about you guys in the audience? What do you use? What are you finding works for building either your own profiles or your communities?
Facebook, LinkedIn, not so much.
Okay, we're getting Facebook and LinkedIn, not so much Twitter for building communities. Any other differences? What do you use, Megan? Depends who she's targeting. Right, okay. I'm not going to run over and give her the mic right now because I'm just going to take that right back. But yeah. Well, so what about in terms of the targeting? Should we be looking at going local or global, because these are global networks, but if we're just appealing to a certain defined territory, do we need to go global? I mean, what advice would you have on that?
I think this is probably the most fundamental mistake made in social media and social networking of all kinds. But when we look at people's individual social networks, who they're connected to, when you look at your own connections, you'll discover that almost everybody you're connected to on Facebook is somebody you know in the real world. When you look at the same on LinkedIn, virtually everybody you connect with, the vast majority are people you know and you could see probably every day. And so consequently, very few of our connections as a proportion are actually global. So what we're doing is we're using social networks to extend our local networks and deepen our relationships with people we already know in the real world. So if we're trying to target people, globally, that's not the way people are using social networks. They're using them locally. In fact, there's research that shows the average distance between people on a social network is 10 kilometers. You could walk to all your Facebook friends. You could walk to most of the people you know online. And so the notion that we're setting up global networks is a misnotion. That's not what's happening. It's a false assumption that this is what's going on. So if we're trying to build a community, what we really need to do is to create lots of local communities and then interconnect those local communities. And that's going to work much better. So it means, for instance, if you are running a global event, you'd be better off creating, a group of a community in Brazil on Orkut, a community maybe in the UK on Google Plus, because fewer people there could be interested in Facebook in your target, another group in, say, France on Facebook, another group in Australia on another network. And so consequently, you'd end up with lots of different networks that you would then interconnect. And all those would be local networks, which is what the users want. They want to be able to really have conversations with people they already know.
That's a really fascinating point as well. I hadn't. What another brilliant insight. I mean, there's so many notes being taken here right now. It's it's just really good in terms of thinking differently. I personally, I would have thought the same, that we would have had these kind of global connections. But you're right. You can walk to the people that you know in your network. Think of that. Amazing. So I'm just checking a Twitter stream for a moment just to see what's going on there. Have we got any other kind of questions coming in for you? Yeah, no, it's good. So yeah, you're getting lots of nice comments, but no questions coming out at the moment. But Megan's got one.
Hi. I just want to know, in terms of, you're saying it's all about building the communities. So if I was so we're looking more at communities as opposed to individual connections, because obviously, yeah, you're right, I agree. I mean, it is very much whoever you meet, even from this conference, this event, we're going to go back and connect through LinkedIn, and it's going to build them, but it's people that we've actually met already. So really we need to then start focusing on communities as opposed to one-on-one connection. I mean, because I know that I get a lot of requests and I don't accept them all. I don't know the person for a start off. It's just like, hey, let's connect. It's like, well, no, I'm not going to connect. Why would I do that? So for me, if I was going to connect to people that I had a connection from Qatar. She hadn't met me. She obviously was researching. I'm in Bahrain. I do events and PR and show Gizmo the app. She has a similar business in Qatar and connected. But I think it's also the communication, the introduction. So she explained who she was, why she wanted to connect with me, and then obviously are there any synergies that we had. And I actually built that and connected with her. Obviously I've never met her, but I can then build that. So do you think the communication and how you approach people across the channels is important and impactful in terms of making solid connections globally?
That's a very important point, actually, because if we forget social networks, if we think of, the life before the internet of 25 years ago, we all had to connect with people who we'd never met before. So we would write a letter of introduction, or somebody would mention us to them and would talk about us as a piece of background. And then that person would decide whether or not they would really want to meet us. And it's about that communication. It was about that letter of introduction. And we seem to have forgotten that online. We don't introduce ourselves, we just press a button to connect. And what we should do, for instance, on LinkedIn, you can send a message to say, a bit more about you, why you want to connect with that person, what it is that you think they can offer you and what you can offer them, and why there would be a good reason to make that connection. But all we do is rather lazily just press a connect button or a friend me button without that introduction. In the past, before the internet came along, we did make those introductions.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and leads us quite nicely to, if we have all these communities around us, what are we doing or how can we help people to take part in them? Because you can have a number of followers or a number of likes, but really we want people to be doing a little bit more we want people to be taking something from that community and really getting involved, don't we?
We do, but that all depends upon what you put into that community. And so the one thing that keeps people involved in a community is whether you're saying anything interesting. So if what you're saying on all of these different networks you might have, is if what you're saying is promotional, if it's advertising, if it's boring, then people aren't going to be interested. You've got to provide people with interesting stuff. If we think about a dinner party conversation, that there will be, you go to dinner parties, we've all been to dinner parties where there's a boring person. Hopefully that's not me at the dinner party, but we've all been to dinner parties where there is a boring person, that what they say is just not interesting, and you ignore them. Whereas you go to dinner parties and there's somebody saying really interesting things, they're talking about things you're interested in, they're asking questions of you, they're engaging with you, and even if you've met them for the first time at this dinner party, you might then continue the conversation at a later date. You maybe go to them for dinner. And so consequently, the same happens in online social networks. If we're not giving interesting stuff, then people are going to ignore us. So the whole way that your community is going to work is on how interesting you are, and that depends upon how much you know about your community, because you can't be interesting to people if you don't know about them. So the biggest real thing you've got to do is truly understand your audience, truly understand their needs, requirements, what they want, and then you can deliver stuff that's interesting to them.
Yeah, and I think that works really well for me on the Facebook page of the Speaking Association, because there are very clear guidelines there on the UK site that basically says no self-promotion, no other marketing, but here we're looking at developing speakers and their skills. So this is what we'd like all the content to be around. And I know that's policed really well by a team of moderators, of which you're one. You are one, aren't you? You are, yeah. You're keeping us all on track, which is brilliant. And I think that's probably why that particular community has got 5,000 members all dipping in and dipping out of that particular Facebook page. So that's brilliant. So, well, the time has absolutely flown by. I can't believe that we've been asking you questions, well, interrogating you almost for the last 29 minutes. That's just brilliant, Graham. What I'd like to ask, and I'm sure that you won't have a problem with this, but we're encouraging people to ask questions long after this event is finished, because we've been here for 2 days and we want to stimulate some discussion. And I know that I often think of questions after the event. So do we have what would the best way be for people to connect with you and send you questions? What would you prefer?
Well, if they use the hashtag ECME14, I'll continue to answer questions on that. Or if they connect with me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @GrahamJones. Either of those, I'll be happy to answer questions for the rest of the day.
Brilliant. Thank you very much from all of us here in Abu Dhabi, and thank you also from the online audience that are looking in as well. I'm sure you will get some questions. The notes have been taken at a speed of light here, so it's been brilliant, very insightful, and yeah, it's always good to have people like yourself on that can really help us get deeper into social media and those kind of things and how that can benefit our industry as well. So thank you from all of us here at GIBTM in Abu Dhabi, Event Camp Middle East 2014, and I'll see you again in the UK at some point soon.
Yep. See you soon.
Graham.
Thanks
Cheers.
very much.
And this time we're really a big part of their show as well, because we are, around me I can see other exhibition stands, and there's a lot of business going on right now. So really good to be back here, and make sure that you follow us. Make sure you use the hashtag, which is ECME, have to get the letters around the right way, ECME14, and if you put that on Twitter or Instagram, that will pick up the social media activity, and that would be great, because we want to really spread the message, because these are events that are really looking to drive new ideas forward. We have a Facebook page, Event Camp Middle East, so you can go and like that, and producing and curating the content of this, and also I've been your online host and on-site host for the past 2 days. At the back of the room I have Martin Shepherdley from Be There Global, who is arranging to take all of the content outside of the room and stream it across the web, and he's been doing a fabulous job over the past, since we began yesterday on the 24th of March. And next to him I see Anton from Newman and Miller, and they have been an extremely, just a brilliant audio-visual company that have really helped us put this thing together, because we've had a few technical glitches along the way, but they've all been ironed out, all the bugs have gone, and that's it. Plus, of course, we have our other driving force, and also share the love. Make sure that other people around you are seeing what's going on right now. So if they go to bit.ly/event CME 14, then they will come to the viewing page. So do share with your friends and colleagues, and make sure that you are really helping us to spread the word. That would be fantastic, because it's for the benefit of the industry overall anyway. So the speakers this afternoon, we're going to start off with Graham Jones in a moment, and I'm going to get a signal from the back of the room in a moment. He's going to come in remotely. I've got that signal, and I can see Graham to my right. Also over in New Zealand, Mary Claire Andrews and Josh Dry, who have been doing a lot of marketing, but also they put an app together. They put the Show Gizmo app together, so you can go in and find all of the details of Event Camp on there. You can find the speakers' bios, you can rate the speakers as well, and you can basically find other documents that will be uploaded later on as well. So that's another great thing to check out. The furniture here is provided by Catertainment, and we've got beanbags, we've got lanterns, we've got a Middle Eastern feel around us, and GIBTM, of course, have been fabulous in inviting us back for a second time. So they've invited us back to deliver Event Camp again in their show. The closing of our afternoon at this time is with 3 fantastic speakers. We've already had a number of brilliant sessions from other speakers that have come on and entertained us and educated us, and also given us real things to think about. And those things are about how we can take the events industry forward. Event Camp is really it's all about trying new techniques, trying new ideas, and looking at the industry in a slightly different way and saying, well, what could we do differently to benefit businesses everywhere through events that we put on. So that's really what it's about. Now, event camps are run by volunteers. So you have myself, I've been